Hi everyone, welcome to another maths video by Maths with Sarah. So today we're going to be tackling this two-part question. Both parts involve understanding and being able to use the rules of indices. So let's get started. With all these videos, I encourage you to pause the videos around about now. Have a think, have a go yourself. Even if you feel like you can't tackle it and it's way too hard for you, I still encourage you to have a little think about what you do know about this question before we go through it together. Okay, let's go. So with this question here, we've got 2 to the power of 14 divided by brackets 2 to the power of 9, and then all of that to the power of 2. So what we need to remember here is how to tackle the rules of indices. So we've got something, or 2 to the power of 9, and then all of that to the power of 2. So because we've got a power to a power, or an indice to an indice, then we need to multiply these two powers. So we need to do, in order to work out the part of this one. So in that case, when we put these two together, we get 2 to the power of 14 divided by 2 to the power of 9 times by 2, which is 2 to the power of 18. And that's one of the rules of indices, is that if you've got something, a power to a power, then you multiply the two powers together. So in this case, we'll get 2 to the power of 14 divided by 2 to the power of 18. So the next rule of indices that we need to remember is that if we have a power divided by another power, what we do is subtract the powers from one another. So if we figure that one out, we get 2 to the power of 14 take away 18. And if we do that, we end up with 2 to the power of minus 4. So again, we're using the third lot of rule of indices. We've got the first rule is that if we've got power to a power, then we multiply the powers. If we've got a power divided by a power, we subtract the powers. And now we've got a negative power. So what do we do with a negative power? Well, hopefully you remember that a negative power is the same as saying 1 over whatever this is to the power. So now the negative sign, all it means is we turn it into 1 divided by, and then exactly the same as we had before, we just remove the negative sign. So now we have 1 divided by 2 to the power of 4. And if we calculate this, I'm going to write it all out just to make it a little bit simpler. We've got 1 divided by 2 times 2 times 2 times 2. And if we work that out, what we actually end up with is 1 divided by, same as 4 times 4, 1 divided by 16, or 1/16. And we've been asked to give your answer as a fraction in its simplest form. Now, this definitely is in its simplest form. We can't simplify that any further. And so we can be reasonably confident that we've probably got the answer about right. Okay, let's have a look at the second part of this question. So the second one is 25 to the power of 3 over 2. So we've got a fractional power here. So this question really is testing every single rule of indices that you know. So what we hopefully remember is that a fractional power, say if we had 25 to the power of a half, what I always like to do is to separate all these out. So rather than trying to tackle 3 over 2, which my brain isn't going to be able to do in one step, I'm going to separate it out and do it in multiple different steps. So what we can say is this is the same as 25 to the power of a half all to the power of 3, because remember, if we can multiply these two powers together, we're still going to end up with a power of 3 over 2, but we've just separated it out to make it a little bit easier to deal with. So we've now got 25 to the power of a half. Hopefully you remember, or one of the rules of indices is that if you have a fractional power, then that's the same as the roots. So here we would have 25, or the square root of 25, which is the same as the power of a half. And then we're going to do all of that to the power of 3. So if we figure this out, the square root of 25 is just 5. I don't know where I was going with that number. And we're going to do it to the power of 3. So if we calculate that, 5 times 5 times 5 is 125. So this question basically had a lot of fair amount of memory in it. So it wasn't something, if you didn't know the rules of indices, it was going to be very challenging to work out. You could have written it all out. Of course, you could have written, 2 times 2 times 2, 14 times, and then cancelled them out, which absolutely would have worked. And it's a completely valid way of doing it. It just makes it slightly quicker if you can remember some of the rules of indices. So hopefully all of you can remember that if you're dividing two powers, that's the same as subtracting. This product rule, so if you've got a power to a power, multiplying the powers is slightly more difficult. Negative power always, remember, that's the same as 1 over. And then this one I think is the hardest to remember. It's the fractional power. Is that if you've got something to the power of a fraction, that's exactly the same as doing the root of it. And remember, it is completely acceptable to break these all down. So, if you're struggling to do 25 to the power of 3 over 2, doing it to the power of a half and then to the power of to the power of 3 is absolutely acceptable, and it does get you to the right answer in the end. So hopefully that's made you a little bit more confident on rules of indices. I have got a few more other questions or other videos that I've done that involve indices, so I will make sure that those are tagged in this video. So if you're still struggling, I encourage you to check those out. So hopefully that was useful for you. I really encourage you to subscribe to the channel so that you know exactly what's coming out next. Thanks for watching.